Come say hi to the people. Oh, just for a second. Hello. The Left Right Labs mascot, Sunday.
My baby.
As you can tell, she loves being held. Unlike Sunday, most people want to get noticed.
Good point.
Yes, she's hiding, but that's what we're going to talk with you about today is really about when you're at that phase of your brand where you're ready to get noticed and have eyes on you. What does that process look like? What are the steps that you should follow? Now, I want to kind of put a little caveat out there that before you get noticed, we highly, highly, highly recommend that you stop and get clear first. So if you haven't done that, go back and watch that video where we talk through that process of getting clear on you, on where you are right now, what you stand for right now, and how you want to put that out into the world.
Yeah, you don't want to get noticed for the wrong things.
That's so true. So once you've gotten clear and you know what your business stands for and exactly what your ideal clients need from you right now, now it's finally time for you to step into that phase where you can get noticed. And Gretchen, tell us a little bit from your perspective about what getting noticed is and how you like to help clients do that.
Well, getting noticed for a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm just gonna put my website up with a pretty face on it. It looks professional. It looks pretty. That's good enough. That's gonna get me noticed. And that's not exactly how it works. It's not a if you build it, they will come kind of scenario. You have to promote yourself. You have to get out there and you have to get noticed. So getting the design, getting the website out there, that's just one piece of it. But another thing about getting noticed is, first of all, are you getting noticed by the right people?
Yeah.
Because if you're not, then you're doing all this work for nothing. And I would say then the other thing about getting noticed is just making sure that your brand is cohesive across all of your channels.
Yeah.
Because all the places that people are going to find you, because you're going to have to put yourself out there. Again, it's not a build it and they will come. You got to put yourself out there. So when you put yourself out there on the social media channels, you got to make sure that your brand matches everywhere, because the rule of thumb is they got to see you like 7 times before they kind of recognize you. But if they're seeing 7 different versions of you, they're not going to recognize you.
Yeah. And, some people might think that that's only important when you're just starting out and that, oh, the longer that I have my brand, the easier it's going to be for people to recognize me. There's some truth to that, but this is also a trap that we see a lot of brands fall into when they've grown, when they've been around 8, 10, 15 plus years. It's really easy to only think about what are the platforms that I'm on most often. So let's say the way that you find your clients, you're an established thought leader, your brand has been around for a while. So you're spending time speaking from stages, or you are on television, or you're spending a lot of time on social media or with affiliate partners promoting the programs that you have. What happens is if you aren't thinking about where you're sending them in the long run, you're going to lose them. I had this experience back in 2017 where we were at an industry event together.
Mhm.
We were going to a mastermind event. There was a speaker that I knew was going to be there. I was so excited to see him.
She
Like
was.
I already like I sat down before he even came on stage and like had the credit card out. Like it was that kind of situation. And I was so excited to see him speak and teach on his expertise. The speech was fantastic. What he was promoting was fantastic. I was ready to take action. And then by the time I followed his little QR code and went to his website, it looked awful. Like it didn't have any of the quality of how he carried himself, how he was speaking from stage, how he was promoting the product and the training that he had. And so I didn't take action. No, this is someone I had followed for a
Mhm.
while. This is someone that I was ready to move forward with, but I had this massive loss of trust because what he was saying from stage and what he was explaining as ways that he could serve his people sounded so fantastic. But then when I actually got to the landing page and to the website, it was incongruent. So that is one of the ways that I think established thought leaders really need to take that time to step back. And again, as we mentioned in our last video, get clear on where they are today, but also make sure that where you're directing people is something you want to get noticed for. Like, is it congruent? Is it going to help people really carry on that know, like, trust factor? And if your brand isn't doing that in all of the different channels, then that's something that you really need to go back and consider. Because ultimately, getting noticed is, yes, it's about attracting eyes to you, but it's also about making that audience feel seen. Like they need to land there. It needs to feel completely congruent. They need to see themselves. They need to see a hero story for themselves of how they get to step up and be the hero because of how you're guiding them. And if that's not happening, I'm telling you, you are leaving money on the table every time.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed when we're working with clients who need a rebrand, they when they're sending traffic somewhere, they're sending it from social media sometimes to other platforms that aren't their website, and then those don't look like their website, and that causes a point of confusion, like it's a third party payment gateway or something, and they don't have control over branding that, or they
Or
didn't
the
bother to
landing
brand it.
page.
They didn't bother to brand it in the first place. They're using the default template.
Yeah.
It's just plain. It doesn't even have their logo on it. I mean, every payment gateway that we've worked with, there's usually some level of customization. At the very least, you can change a color and it'll put the logo on there to make it match what you have. That's an important step because that there's a trust factor there. You're all of a sudden they're seeing your brand and your logo and your things, and then they're sent to a payment gateway that's just like, wait, am I in the wrong place, right place? You know, it puts a level of confusion in there that's not needed. And the other thing to remember is all roads lead to your website.
Yes.
And if your website looks outdated, doesn't match what you have on social media, again, that's that trust factor that Trina was talking about earlier. And that's the thing you've got to avoid if you want to make the sale.
And I think it's also, even when you know that it's incongruent, you're carrying around this little bit of shame that ends up showing. Like, even if you're the most well-developed speaker and you're used to selling from stage or through webinars or whatever the case is, there's always like this little bit of hesitancy to send them to the website or to that landing page because oh crud, this isn't congruent. This hasn't been kept up to date. And so that's one of those things to look out for.
I think that's also important because I think we see a lot of clients who use external third-party tools. I won't name all the tools that they use, but there's a lot of them. Y'all know what they are. But they use those tools because they're like, well, my website's outdated, but I could go over here and I could use this tool because I can just point and click and I can make this quick design and I can do this thing and I've got a funnel, and that's all great, and those tools can do those things, and I'm not again bashing the tools, but when you do that and now that tool looks different from your website,
right?
And what's funny, I find, and now this is coming from the developer in me, in the 20 plus years I've been doing development, it always cracks me up when someone goes and uses one of these third party tools when you could do the exact same thing with your website if you just had someone who knew how to do it. and it would save you so much time and so much money because you would be using your existing tools.
Yes. And the whole purpose of getting noticed, obviously, is to have that instantly recognizable brand. Like, regardless of where they're hearing about you, where they're finding you, it's that, yes, that the logo is congruent, but also the colors, the fonts, but even the way you speak is congruent. Are you speaking from stage using the same terminology that is going to be on your website or on your landing page? Are you even carrying that through to your product packaging? The descriptions that you have about your product or your food or the course that you're selling, like, is that language congruent all the way through? So, the idea of getting noticed is really to make sure that you're bringing it to life in ways that your customer can't ignore, that they just really feel like, okay, this is exactly who this person is. They know who they are, and they know who they are everywhere. It's the same regardless of where you go. So we want to give you kind of 3 key things to pay attention to when it comes to getting noticed, different areas that you can dial in. I hinted a little bit at one of them just a moment ago, but your messaging is so important. Like, do you know what your brand voice is? Do you know how you speak in writing, in public speaking, when you're on a podcast, in your product materials? That messaging is so important. And not just that it's congruent, but does it matter to the audience that you serve? Are you using words that they are using? Are you really thinking about the problems that they're experiencing now? Because that's one of the other things that we've run into, even working with, fantastic, well-established brands. If you're not going back and at least checking your messaging and updating your messaging every 2 years, even if you left the visuals alone and those wrote it out for, 3 to 5 years, but your messaging should be changing with the times.
How many of you all still have COVID language on your website?
Yes, yes, yes. That's Thankfully, that's a phase that is mostly behind us, right? So going through and thinking about that and making sure that that is kept up to date, but also just the things that are popular change, right?
Hmm.
So you want to make sure that when you're writing your content, you want it to feel established, that it can last a while, but you also need to be going back through it at least every 2 years. If you have a team member or yourself that can be checking it even every 6 months,
Hmm.
just for light updates, because it might not mean that you need to do a complete overhaul on your
Right.
content. I mean, Gretchen, you've gone through and done this for a lot of clients. Do you want to talk about kind of what you're looking for when you're just reviewing content and looking where little things need to be updated?
Well, in today's world, the shorter the better.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we're doing a lot with our rebranding right now is we're taking clients who have just massive amounts of copy on their pages, and we're stripping that down into the core things that are important to the reader, because the reader is in today's world with the short attention spans, they're just scanning.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure, number one, that the headlines are if you can read the headlines and understand what's going on the page, then you've nailed it. If you read the headlines and you're still like, what do they do, it's not working.
Yeah,
And
especially for those
yes,
people that are skimming
yeah,
down the
and keeping the
page.
copy short. And the other thing with websites is just to make sure that the underlying technology is up to date, because the and this again where the 6 month review, or I mean, I would even go a little shorter time span on that when it
Quarterly.
comes to, yeah, maybe quarterly, simply because the technology is changing so fast right now, and what Google was looking for, and what your customer is actually, how they're using their mobile devices changes. New iOS updates come out, and they all of a sudden are using their phone differently.
Yeah.
So those you have to check your website and make sure that is coming through.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't get to control the way that you get noticed.
Right. That's very true.
So you want to stay on top of that, or have team members that stay on top of that, or hire a team that's going to stay on top of that, so that you're making sure that that is consistent throughout. And not only thinking about your messaging, as we've talked about, but also thinking about the brand visuals. This is what most people think about when they think of branding. And it is incredibly important, but I want you to pay attention to something I'm going to say here. If you're a note taker, pull out your pencil. Your brand visuals, you should, yeah, your Apple Pencil, right? You should like your brand visuals, but your audience should like them more.
Mhm.
I'm going to say that again. You should like it, but your audience should like them more. It should feel like they are coming home and going, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly how I want to be seen. This is someone I aspire to be, or this is a company that I know like really gets my vibe." Like it needs to be something that you enjoy, but that ultimately they enjoy even more. So I always tell our clients, I am an advocate for your end client all
Mhm.
day long, because they're the ones that want to learn from you. They are experiencing and growing because of your thought leadership. They're the ones that are going to be purchasing your products. So at the end of the day, if it is not something that they are feeling completely electrified by, then we've missed the mark. So that's something that you really need to think about when you're going through your process of getting noticed, especially when you're making a pivot, right? And people have come to know you one way and you're looking to make a change. There's some real psychology and science that needs to go into the thought process of how you're making those shifts, so that it aligns with you and feels true to you, so you can own it with zero hesitancy, but also that the audience feels connected to it as well, because that's ultimately, relationships are what sell. It's not
Mhm.
your product, it's not your team, like those are little pieces of it, but ultimately what really sells is relationships. So when they feel that they can have a relationship because of their experience on your website or your landing page or your product packaging, whatever that may be, when they get to hear you in an interview and they feel like they know you and like your best friends, that's fantastic, because they're feeling seen and heard. And we need to make sure that that is carried all the way through your brand, your website, and your funnels. And, those brand visuals, you want to be thinking about, not only are they going to resonate with yourself and your audience, but also, is this something that has some longevity? So I really kind of warn clients not to lean too heavily into trends of what's happening right now. It's nice to be aware of them. And if you have the money to switch it up with a trend every time it comes through, then by all means go for it. But what happens is you actually dilute your brand,
Mhm.
because then you start to look like everybody else that's hopping on that trend. So I really like to help our clients think through a balance of how they can do that in a way that the brand visuals will last for a long time. And also when it comes to the visuals, not only that they're going to work on your website and on your digital products, but how are they going to work in print media? Now, I guarantee you, if you are working just with a company that only does web, they're not thinking about this.
Mm-mm.
So you want to make sure if your current team is just a web person, that you're pulling in a print media person, or that you find a team that does both, because ultimately that brand has to translate no matter how you
Yep.
grow. So let's say you decide to get out there and start, showing up at trade shows, and all of a sudden you need trade show banners, and then you need merch for the table, or you're somebody who you're going to end up adding a fleet of vehicles to your brand. And now you have to think about vehicle wraps and the way that those things are going to be carried through with your brand. Like, there's so many different ways that your brand can be expressed, which is half the fun.
Mhm.
But you really want to think about, when you are creating that option of getting noticed, is it going to be flexible for you? And are you working with somebody who can help you think through all those iterations? I think that's super important.
Yeah.
And so then, Gretchen, I'm curious, from your perspective, when it comes to the website part of getting noticed, what are some of the top things that you want people to think about from the visual perspective for their website?
Again, what it looks like on multiple devices is
Yeah,
absolutely critical. A lot of times, what happens is when you're in the design process, you're looking at the site from the desktop version, and that's what most and we do the same. We present that desktop version because that's just traditionally what we've done. But also, the mobile version is more critical than the desktop
yeah,
version, and so we also present that mobile version, and we want to make sure that that mobile version works on multiple devices, not just your phone. So when what a lot of times what happens is a website owner will look at their site on desktop and they'll look at it on their own phone and they're like, yep, good, awesome. But what in reality is, it looks great on their phone, but it doesn't look great on this other person's phone or this particular browser, and so on. And so when we do that, we test across all those platforms and make sure that the site, when we say it's mobile responsive, it responds to
yeah,
all of those different devices and all those different screen sizes. So that's super critical. Another thing that most people don't realize in this days of iPhone and AI technology and all this stuff is your phone can now read a website to you.
hmm,
And if your page isn't structured in a way that your iPhone can actually use that technology, then someone who is used to that, and I do that a lot, I like to just have a page read to me while I'm doing something else. Maybe I'm cleaning or whatever. And I'm like, I want to read this article, but I don't have time to just sit down and focus on that. But could you just read it to me? And if the page isn't set up for that, then I can't read it, and I may forget about it. So make sure that your content is in every possible format that it can be received on different devices, different technology.
yeah. And I also like to think about, when it comes to getting noticed on your website and the visuals on your website, making sure that every section doesn't feel the same. Like, there should be some flow and some
Mhm.
variety. There should be some things that surprise people. This does not mean, please do not put animation in every single section. This is like, anytime I see that, I feel like, remember when PowerPoint first added
Yeah.
animation? And everybody added it to every bullet point that came out. So it's using things like animation to bring excitement to the page without overwhelming it
What you're
or
really
slowing
saying
it down.
is, don't make your website look like MySpace.
Please don't. But there's so many things that you can do to add visual variety, whether it's through patterns or changes in color or changes in arrangement of how the images are created. Thinking about things that are more than just this square photo here and this text
Mhm.
here and then text here and square photo here. Like, what are some ways that you can break that up? And if that's part of your style, can you alternate the layout some? So let's say you're doing a section that has two columns right here. The next section should have three columns or only one column. Like, just changing things up in a
Mhm.
way that makes it feel exciting and fresh. And also thinking about the user experience on your website is massive. Like, how is your end client, again, I'm advocating for that end client, How are they using your website? What information do they need to know first, second, third? Like making it simple for them to say yes to you and to say yes to themselves and the transformation that they receive from the work that they do with you. So if you're not pausing long enough to think through even maybe how your sales have changed, because if the way you sell is different, then the way that information is displayed on your website needs to be different. So every time you have one of those changes internally in your team, you really need to be thinking about, has that been brought out through the website? Have we done that in a way that is fun and exciting and also keeps the audience engaged? Because I think that is something that can just start to feel really stale when it's the same layout, same section over and over and over again. Then it makes people not even want to read your content because they don't feel like there's life to it. And I think that's something that definitely happens with established brands as well. Not because that's how it started. Maybe it started with variety. But what happens as we grow, and you've probably experienced yourself, you just start getting things out there and you're stapling things on.
Yeah.
There's an extra page here, there's a section dropped in here, and you're just getting it out there to get it done, which in that moment might not be bad, but you need to circle back and make sure, is there a freaking flow for this? Like, can people understand where
Yeah.
we're trying to take them? Because if not, it's just a big muddy pile of soup.
Yeah, I was gonna say also, take time to think about what content belongs on your desktop versus what content belongs on your mobile device, because that's a different experience. If I'm scrolling on something on my phone and trying to digest it, I don't need to have a lot of imagery blocking the text. I'm just trying to read something and get some information. Imagery is good on mobile. You want that. You want that space and that breathing room. But sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, when does this roll of pictures end? And because they no one took the time to stop and make a horizontal scroll of those pictures or something, so that they're available on the mobile device, but they're not something that I have to scroll up and down to get past to get to the next piece of content. There's also this was a really good example. We were contacted by a client who had someone else do a landing page for him, and it was perfectly fine. And it was a really long landing page. I mean, it was massive. And he was like, it's just not converting as well as I'd like. Could you guys just take a look at it? And I'm like, oh, sure, no problem. So I got in there, and the first thing I do is I'm going to check it on mobile, because that's where, like, I think at that point it was like over 60% of his traffic was coming in from mobile. And I'm like, well, let's look at it from what that mobile user's view. And I started swiping and swiping and swiping. I'm like, I'm not even getting to a buy button anywhere. No buttons, no action. I'm walls and walls of text. And it was good information. It was important. I didn't feel like he needed to cut any information out, but if I was a fast action taker, if I like read the first two paragraphs and I'm just like, I want this, I had no way to get it without scrolling. And I'm talking, we're 10, 15, 20 swipes down the screen. And so I just said, hey, why don't we, and on the desktop, because of the wider screen and we could fit more text in there, it wasn't as bad. It was like 3 scrolls and you got to a button. But I'm like, on the mobile screen, that just wasn't cutting it. And so I said, why don't we go back through this on mobile, and on mobile only, we'll insert a button here. So about every 3 swipes or so, we're hitting a button. And he's like, he said, yeah, let's do that. So I went back, I edited the page for him, and I made it so that only on mobile we saw these buttons. And guess what? His conversions went up, because now we were seeing, we had tracking devices on us. We could watch the page, watch the user activity. Now the scroll, people weren't scrolling as far down. They were actually clicking buttons up more towards the top of the page. They were actually convinced that this was a product they needed within the first like 3 or 4 swipes of reading that copy. So the top copy was performing really well. The buttons were there. Yeah, we had some people go all the way to the bottom, and that's perfectly fine. But we were getting conversions at the top of the page because we paid attention to that, and we put those buttons in and made it easier for those customers to take action.
Well, and I think that just circles right back to what I said toward the beginning, is that be an advocate for your end client.
Yep.
Like thinking about how they're using it, how they're going to take action, when they're going to have a pause, or someone's going to come in the room and interrupt them. And now they come back to their phone and they're just in the middle of the sea of content with no reminder of how to take a next action. So, I think those are some really great tips around getting noticed and thinking about how to put your brand out there. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. What are some questions that you have about getting noticed? What do you want to know about from us process around your building and scaling your brand and your website. So thank you so much. We can't wait to chat again. Bye bye.
Bye.